This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
Okay. Imprints. We imprint everything in reality with that sound and vibration of our soul tone. Whether we can see it or not, most of us don't recognize it because we can't see it. It does affect everything in our surroundings. Soul notes can be a drum, a Tibetan bowl, a flute, or a song that reaches your soul. They wake you up. They help us step through the door, many doors, and experience altered states where we can communicate with spirit in a very simple manner. The experience is the opening of a portal or a vortex to timelessness that many of us have experienced during our lives. If we step through the door and open the portal, everything changes from our vision to our sense of no time. The personal opening for me happened in 1989, and it was a song titled "I Am Calling You." It wasn't very popular. It was from a movie. The movie was called Baghdad Cafe. Some of you may have seen it, some of you not. But it was the sound of the woman's voice opened a portal that allowed spirit to call me across the dimensions and the universe. I went way out of my way to find this song and drove all over Austin, Texas until somebody would tell me what it was on. And finally I brought it home, proceeded to play this song over and over, going into an altered state until I met my master teacher that I would be working with for probably the rest of my life. So I can attest that it can be any song, not just a spiritual song that finally hits your soul note and makes everything open. That came in 1989. The master spirit that I work with, his name is Master Taiwan Chuan. And it took about 2 months of training to be able to totally understand this new ability of what is mostly understanding and receiving the thought transference first. And in order to have me be able to do this successfully, I had this training period, and then as soon as the spirit felt I was ready, we had our first book done within 6 months, total thought transference. I would receive a paragraph at a time, and the whole thing just proceeded. The book was titled Living in Joy, Love, and Awareness, All Are One, and I didn't get it published till 1992. It wasn't a massive printing, but it did have the habit of jumping off the shelf into people's hands who needed to read it, which was quite interesting. In actually it was in December of 1992, I found out my growth was just beginning because I had a Mayan shaman show up at my door in Wimberley, Texas, and he said it was time for a very important initiation. He wanted to know if a Judith lived here, and he had a local woman with him that I hadn't met before. Turned out her name was Joy, so that was joyful. And I invited him in, and we talked for about 2 hours, and I agreed that I would do this. So the next day she shows up, she hands me The Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertog, and I start reading, and I say, well, when? Well, when am I going to be ready? And she says, I'll tell you when you're ready. Okay, keep reading. This book is this thick. Some of you have probably seen it and read it. Beautiful diagrams in it. And it took about 2 months. I think it was in February of 1993 where I actually had the initiation, which turned out to be connecting my axiotonal lines back to the universal grid. And I kid you not, overnight, my world changed. A lot of people would say I wouldn't like those changes, but that was my path, and I ended up uprooted, go with spirit. I left home with a suitcase and no feet connected, just fly and trust. And I stayed pretty much on the road with spirit from 1993 until 2003 was when I got my first place to live where I now live, that I'm kind of anchored a little bit. And still managed to do all this work while being on the road and on call and being sent to the Anasazi lands and the Mayan lands. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. But what I'm trying to tell you is anything is possible. When your door is knocked on and they come to get you, don't say no. You've got a grand adventure ahead of you. So the initiation was that powerful. The next lessons that they gave me, which while I was on the road, was manifesting and demanifesting. One of the things that this master had told me from the beginning is your training is not going to be normal. You're going to teach by being, which, when you say those words, you think, okay, doesn't everybody do that? No. Because unless I had a personal experience of a concept that they wanted me to teach, I wasn't allowed to teach it. So the lessons got really bizarre. But a lot of fun. I mean, it really was a lot of fun. The feathers were first. Feathers were everywhere. Then I went into water, learning that water is a conductor for manifestation. So they didn't waste any time. I got my suitcase and got on a plane in July. In fact, July 26th, which was Jose Arguelles' date for the beginning of a Mayan year in the Mayan calendar, which was kind of funny. I get to California. I don't know anything about Mayans or anything. And the gal I'm there to help hands me the Mayan factor and says, I think you're supposed to read this. I heard you had a Mayan initiation. And I said, well, yeah, but I don't know anything else. Well, here, read this. And then she said, why are you wearing that stupid-looking ring? And I said, well, Spirit told me in December that I needed to wear a ruby on my index finger, and I didn't have the money to buy a ruby, so I bought a fake one. It looked like an eye. They said it was for third eye initiation, so I go, okay, there's a dollar one. It's shaped like an eye. It's fake, but, the intent is there. So I'm wearing this silly-looking ring, and I'm telling her the story. And 7 days later, they manifested a ruby through water. In the oddest situation, it was a big children's pool where we filled it up in the morning at sunrise to water the animals, and filled it up again at sunset, changed the water so they'd have clean water. Well, I did the morning one, I did the sunrise one. And we had been out at Yosemite all day having these weird experiences, and she did the sunset one. And I'm in her kitchen, and she comes running in. She said, this ruby was in the water, and it has to be for you because it sure as heck isn't for me. And the ruby, when it's not set in the ring, is about a 2-carat blood red ruby from ancient India. They couldn't even put a time on it, and they definitely couldn't put a value on it. So I'm getting a little bit nervous here, and I'm going, I don't know what they want me to do with this. Do I have to put it in my forehead? If I do, I'm saying no, this is not going to happen. So we had this little discussion, and you can do this with spirit. You can argue with them, you can say no, you can say, I don't think so, and they'll eventually convince you to do it their way. But we ended up, do the ring. So their only description was, and I didn't know why at the time, but it had to have been a jaguar guarding the ruby in a pool of water. And I went to my jeweler, and I said, you can't have the ruby till you're ready to put it in the ring, and I can't leave while you do it because I'm not allowed to let this ruby leave my body or my sight or my person. And he went along with me, and for 8 hours I watched him when he got to that point, sanding and making this thing real so that he could slip the ruby in, and that's what we ended up with anyway. It looks black, but it's the most talkative ruby that I have ever seen. It's just full of action. So that was the first one. This is manifestation. I had nothing to do with this. All I did was tell her that I was supposed to have one. So I'm walking around in awe going, well, okay, I don't believe this, but yes, I believe it. A year later, they take me through the opposite lesson, which was with a Herkimer dimer that was handed to me, a diamond which was handed to me on my travels, and it was gifted. And I get to Colorado, and I'm driving down, and they point to this church. And I don't know if any of you have been to St. Elmo's Church in Colorado, but it's on the main, only interstate there. And it looks like a medieval castle sitting up on a hill. And, okay, what do you want me to do? So I go inside, nothing in there. And they're leading me around through weeds this high on the side of the church, directly to a natural spring, not big, only about this big around. And they said, take the Herkimer diamond, hold it between your two fingers, and just slip it under the surface of the water and watch. And pulse of light hit it, and it demanifested, and I was still, felt like I was holding it. So, okay, now we have the demanifestation lesson. What's this all about? Turns out what we have to learn is that water has a consciousness also. Not only is it a conductor, but it has a consciousness. So I found these pictures from Masaru Emoto's work, who I did, whoops, I went too far. Go back. I want to go back. Anyway, he put messages on bottles of water. One said, I love you. One said, thank you. And one said, I hate you, I'm going to kill you. And those were the three pictures that were up there for you, but they're gone. Anyway, he was an amazing person, and he had done this sound and vibration work with water also. He took a group of 100 to 200 people, surrounded a lake in Japan, and had them all talk to the water. I love you, I honor you, I thank you. I love you, I honor you, I thank you. And within an hour and a half, the water started to change. And within 24 hours, they tested the water, and it was not polluted anymore. Before he started, it looked like the I hate you, I will kill you water molecule that was totally polluted. So I said, okay, I can't teach this unless I can do it. So I do that now. All my water comes from the tap. All my gallon jugs have messages facing the water. And within 3 to 4 hours, you cannot smell any chlorine or chemicals. It tastes very, very sweet, like clear spring water. And this is what I'm teaching the people in Africa now. And I'm sorry that this wonderful African being couldn't come, but there was no visa and no money to bring him here. So you would have met him if I could have managed that, but it didn't happen. However, they are without water. The water they have is polluted, so we're going to work on it Spirit's way and see if we can get them some clean water over there to drink. The third really, really unusual experience, and I'll quit on this pretty soon after this, but I think you'll enjoy it because it has a lot to do with who I am today. Before I went on my first trip to the Yucatan, of course I had the ring. That was done 2 days before they sent me. One of the places they took us was Uxmal, which is in the Puc area, which they call, Puc means hill country, in the center of the Yucatan. Before I left on that journey, I watched my face in the mirror turn into somebody else with owl feathers and a big headdress, and I thought, uh-oh, I'm in for some real adventures. They didn't tell me at the time who it was or what it was, but that transition or transformation in the mirror was really more than kind of interesting, was awesome. So I get to Uxmal, and they have what they call a nunnery quadrangle there. I don't know why they call it a nunnery quadrangle, because it had nothing to do with nuns. On every little doorway there was an owl, and the shaman that was working with us said, okay, everybody pick a spot and meditate so you can receive your cell memory matching the cell memory of the stones and see if you can have an experience. Well, okay, now the whole courtyard fills up with Mayans from 700 to 900 AD. I'm standing there and I'm positioned like this, and they're real. This dimension shift was so real. They were as real as you sitting here, but they were all from another time zone. So I'm receiving, and then it comes time for me to lower my arms, say thank you, and turn the energy to them. And what the Owl Priestess of Uxmal was there for was to receive the energy of the universe every night, all night long as a portal, and in the mornings when the people came, send it to them. That would give them their energy of the day, that would give them the information they needed, all the spiritual that they needed. And what guarded me during the night was Balam Akbal, which is Jaguar of the Night. And they call him that because the spots on his back represent the stars in the universe. And the adventure got even more wonderful. So the portals, what I learned mostly from that shaman was, in our bodies we have cell memory of every lifetime and every venture we've ever had. And when we go to an ancient sacred space, if we have been there before, and if we go with honor and respect, and if we connect, our cell memory unlocks, and we remember who we are from our own cell memory. So if this is true, then every time I went and every one of these portals opened, it was another history lesson in the vastness of our being. And that's the way it continued to work. So I share that with you so you know a little bit about my energy and why I cannot walk away from anything Mayan. It's my heritage. I've been there a million times. And what they've pushed me to do is go deeper and deeper and deeper. Do not look at the first layer. If anything Mayan interests you, you've got a grand ride ahead of you, because their cycles and their information go so deep that we could live 20,000 lifetimes and not read every glyph. that's in the Maya lands. We can't even uncover all the temples in one lifetime. So anybody who says they're an expert or they know everything about the Mayans, give them a little giggle, because there's no way one person can know everything about the Mayan culture. It's just totally impossible. So that was the adventure that brought me into the Jaguar energy, and that's enough for that part. Then we come to, what do I do with all this? Okay, now I'm telling me I'm a shaman, I carry Jaguar energy, I carry this energy, I carry that energy, I do walk around, they guide me around these sites, and I find ley lines, and I find portals, and I send energy, and well, I didn't know what they were training me for, I really didn't. This was just really quite astounding. Well, I got back home between one of my trips, and there was a new toy waiting for me, and it was a chime. And I hit it, and it sounded great, and okay, what do I do with this? Well, I got invited to go to the oldest bookstore in Houston, to just be there and meet the people and see if they want any healing. And I said, but I don't do healing on people. I'm only trained to work on vortexes in the land. No, come, you have to come. So I bring my toner, and I'm standing there, and I don't know what to do, and all these people are coming to the gate, and they're looking around, and they're picking people that they want to work on them. And one man, only one, comes, looks over, points at me, pays the lady, and walks over. And I'm going, oh, what am I going to do now? So he started to tell me his story. He said, I was sent here, and I was told there would be one person that could help me, and when I looked through it, it's you. They sent me to you. He said, I used to be a concert pianist, a performer. He couldn't play anymore. His hands just would not work. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong, nothing between the brain and the hands. You know, it was all supposed to work. So I said, okay. I said, let's hear what you sound like, okay? I don't know what to do with this toner, so I'm playing. I'm praying. And I said, come on, guys, let's get with it. Well, when I toned his arms and I got to here, it stopped. Okay, I went down his hand, it still stopped here. Both arms, he had no hands. Okay, so I said, give me a minute. I went into my meditation and talked to Spirit, and I said, okay, what do I do now? They said, run the energy through. And then they guided my hands, and it only took about a half an hour, and energy started flowing. We worked shoulder to hand, and then all the points in between. And this is something new. Okay. Get down here, all the points in the hand. And finally, energy came through here, which is where you're supposed to flow. And then they had me work until the energy came through all his fingers. So I guess it took about between half an hour and 45 minutes. And he's going, I have hands. I actually can feel again. So I said, well, now go home and try and play your piano. And be sure, give me my phone number. Call me if it works. I'm just as astounded as you are. So that was the beginning of learning what sound has to do with healing. If you use the sound of E, which is tuned to energy, and you use it in the emotional field, which only comes 6 to 8 inches out, so you tone in this area, the whole body, it will set all of your cellular level vibrating. And once it vibrates, then you can go back and run energy through and clear. So then I had my first lessons on tonal acupressure clearing. And this was the beginning of the next phase. What it does also is, as it clears old issues out of your meridians and your lines, it also activates your cellular level, so you gain new abilities and you can grow and have new possibilities. So there's a lot involved in why this type of healing works and what sound has to do with it. Then the path expanded to the scientific world. And in 1998, they sat me down and they said, you're going to be put at the top of the pyramid of the highest science and technology on the planet. And within 2 days, I was found an ad on Barbara Marx Hubbard's site for a spiritually advanced person to join the nanocomputer dream team, which happened to be down the street from me in Houston, like 2 blocks. So I go see them. I don't know anything about nano. I'm not a scientist. What am I doing here? And before I left his office, I was his assistant executive director and in charge of education. And the whole merry-go-round started again. Now I go, why? Well, it turns out nanotechnology, nanoscience holds the secret to creation. It's the scale of science that we could never see. These are molecules in fractals multiplying at the atomic scanning telescope level, which we could not see before they invented these new microscopes. So I'm going, okay, well, maybe if I start learning about this level of science and I get to play with these microscopes and I get to look at atoms and I get to do all this stuff, maybe I'll know how energy turns to matter, how the atoms respond, why the healing works at the atomic level. And this is why I ended up fascinated learning, and by 2002 incorporated the nanotechnology group as a global education consortium for K through 12. I'm not interested in the university level. They're already getting all the money. We want the kids to learn. So hopefully someday, with all of this seeding on the planet, there will be online, free, global education for any child in the world, anywhere, anytime, and that's my goal. So it's working. We're doing marvelous things to get that to happen. What that took me to next was, okay, I wasn't doing much with my Mayan work and my healing work. That had been like 7, 8 years of research, and now it's got me over here in science. And when am I supposed to go back and do my Mayan work? Oh, no, now we're combining it. It's time to write the course. Take all of your research, and in 2 weeks, write the course, train 8 teachers. But before you do that, learn about histones. Oh, okay. We can't see histones at the nano level. I'm all over the internet looking for histones. Well, histones are down at the angstrom level, but somebody did see them. Found the research. Okay, what do I do with this research? Histones happen to reside in the nucleus, the smallest nucleusome in your DNA, in the atoms of your cells. Okay, now we have histones. What do? Well, there's 5 of them. And what they do is when you clear all the issues out of your cellular level, there's a nice little still point in there for all your possibilities and paths of what you can accomplish and do. There's a histone 1 that hides and only comes out when your frequencies change, when some kind of activation happens down in that cellular level, and it'll connect another ladder in your DNA. Fascinating. They're actually now able to see this stuff. Okay, so now we have a chapter on histones in this massive curriculum that's created, which I can't possibly teach between now and Sunday, and I know you guys are going to realize that. But we're going to get some of the concepts in, and we're going to get some hands-on for those that are interested. So now we move to the movement and measure of energy. And this was real important to me because, okay, I'm having all of these experiences. I want to know, when I have people who ask me questions, how do these energies possibly move from the universe, combine, and then reach each spin point in the body that I'm working on? There has to be a pattern for that. There has to be some relationship that we can understand as humans. So that was my next question. And the first glimpse of how that pattern might work came from this Hubble photograph years ago with a double torus circled, shooting energy down to the Taurus constellation. No more was said about it, just one photo, and this is what we're looking at now, and we don't know too much about it, but okay, save the photo. That's a clue. Then the mathematical torus grid showed up in Scientific American. And what they're telling me in math is, in a torus, there are 6 points that form all these triangles, all these pyramids, and as the energy crosses those 6 points, it never even touches each other, and then they all combine, and then they all come around, and they come out as one energizing shot. Okay, so you got 3, and you got 3. This will work because this goes along with all of the combinations of energy from the constellations, the planets, the Tzolk'in, and everything else that has to come in and energize you in your physicality on all your spin points. Okay, we got 6 of them, they're going to come into one. That's a help, but it still doesn't get me to where I'm going on all the energies that they're downloading that I have to use. This was the other diagram that came along with the math, and it shows the donut, which is the torus. Shows how many energies that can go in the ring around it. Okay, save that. That's going to be important in the future. But I still don't have it all. How does it move through space? And then I met Nassim Haramein. And within 2 days of watching 2 videos of his work, I was vibrating for 4 days, going, yes, this man has got it. There's our double torus in movement. You can't see it real well on the screen because of all the light. But all of those 90 points on that double torus can hold a different kind of energy. From all this other research they've given me, I've got 90 energies that have to reach the human body. His work showed me how it happens when it moves. It's the movement in these double toruses in space. So then I go looking, and I get press releases all the time from NASA, and here comes the magnetar in action, torus, shooting out the energy from all those dots in space. So now I have not only Nassim's graphic and animation, but I have NASA's picture showing one in action, and you can see the very center of it exploding like a sun. And they called it a magnetar. So that got me a bit further in how does it move from space to come through a portal like me, who's keeps being told that this is how we will all heal in the future. And his new physics and gravity theory worked. And when I got deeper and deeper into it with him, it matched everything I needed in the Mayans, so we decided to work together on it. And what it shows us is that the magnetic energy is pulled toward us by the gravity, and it resides both in the dark matter of unseen space. Both reside in the dark matter of unseen space, magnetic and gravity. So those are both unseen. They're not the visible spectrum. They come towards the center of an object. And you've seen some of the diagrams for black holes, how they say, okay, it gobbles them up. Their language is horrible. Nothing ever survives, blah, 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 blah. We're all negative here. But what I find out when I start looking through all of the photographs that are coming in from Hubble is they already have pictures. Okay, it goes in a black hole, but the other side, it comes out in white light pulsars. Okay, so what are you telling me? Nothing exists. Nothing can go through a black hole. A black hole is just pulling it in to that still point in the center of all possibilities and shooting it out as light on the other side. Well, lo and behold, this is Nassim's theory. On the other side, it comes out in the electromagnetic grid, which is light. We don't see it until it becomes light. We don't see it in the dark matter, but lately they've been taking pictures in the dark matter, so I should have some of those soon. What this does, as it releases, it combines magnetic and electric energies and becomes our electromagnetic force known as light. And everything in creation, according to everything we can figure out, has a black hole in the center, even our planet Earth. So some of you may have heard Nassim's talks when he was here, and the reason we can't see that we are in a black hole is because of the event horizon. All we see is the rest of the universe is from our event horizon, but we really are working from the still point in the black hole, which means with free will, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Now, that goes all the way down to every atom in your body. So you are a walking manifesto of potential and possibilities. And you are in total control of how you handle that. You can stay clogged up with issues and not have your lines running and never use your potential. Or you can learn to clear yourself or have them cleared so that energy coming in every now moment from the universe activates the 144 spin points on your body so that you can have new opportunities and new experiences. So that brings us back to physics that works. And we go into, very quickly, because this is taking so much time, the solar flares. There are patterns in the solar flares that people are not talking about. And these patterns that I picked up years ago from NASA are not even shown anymore. But I want you to notice in the graph, there is a period here of 79 to 80 years, not quite certain, in that time period of inactivity, nothing happening, no solar flares from the sun at all. Nobody has an explanation for it. Nobody can understand it except spirit. What I am told is that was part of being in this 12,000-year cycle of disconnected dark energy, feeling like we had no power, not being activated. Everything's still, everything's waiting for the next cycle. When the sun becomes active, we get activated. Our spin points automatically receive. Our magnetite in our brains can't find the magnetic grid, and we get a little crazy. These are part of the master plan of how people get activated from the solar flares of the sun. So my question was, okay, we're way up here. This ended at 2000, by the way. Then they took it down. Now they're sending out press releases just about every day that the intensity is not going down. We should have been in solar minimum and going back up to maximum for 2012. But the intensity is releasing solar flares just about every week. It has not dropped from high intensity. The sun can be clear with no sunspots, and within 24 hours we will have the most massive solar flare that they've ever seen form. It'll release, it'll hit the magnetic grid and reach us in a pattern of movement that is absolutely beautiful. This has also been taken down. Our planet is in, you see the first one on the bottom? We've got to go from the bottom up. That looks like a head, and that looks like a heart on the bottom one. And our planet is in that little round circle between the head and the heart on the bottom one. I call that one the ovum, the seed. The next one up, it changes and it becomes the shape of a woman. Very clearly the shape of a woman. The next one up, as it changes and comes around us, it turns into the shape of a man. It has a waist no longer. It's more in the male version shape. And the final one, all the insides change and it becomes the angel. And those are more like wings. So, I've watched the animation of this that used to be up on the NASA site, and they've taken the full animation down and only show the front part now, so I couldn't even get that to work. But what I understand is that every time there's a solar flare, these are the shapes that it forms in. And this involves hundreds of miles in width and length. I mean, we can't even imagine the vastness of our electromagnetic grid that protects our planet. So for this to be in the mind of Creator, that it will take this form every time it releases from the sun into our solar system around our planet, to me is pretty magnificent. And tells us a lot. So anyway, I had to quickly share that with you so you understand the relationships. God is not gone. God is in everything. His mind, His universal mind, did all this for us. All we have to do is uncover the layers and look for the pieces and the clues so that we understand the totality of it. And the last thing on this little presentation of part one, and you can get a break real quick, came up with evolutionary astronomy, and I don't totally understand it. So all I'm going to do is show you the graphic and say, when we are tilted this way, we are in the gate of God of 12,000 year cycle of separation and darkness, and that's about to end. Then we move into, after this 12,000 years, supposedly we moved into, in 2000, the gate of man, which opens fully on May 21st in 2012. This is the part that interested me because as I work with guidance and spirit and Mayans and sites and portals, I am told repeatedly over and over and over again that the aha cycle on May 21st in 2012 will be the last third dimensional fourth world event. They call it an event. In the last world, the third world event, they had also happened in May. May seems to be a good month for ending of cycles. So, okay, go to Koba, stand on top of the pyramid on May 21st in 2000, and we will send you a portal because the skies in 2000 will match the skies in 2012 on May 21st. And we want to set this portal in so that when that last third dimensional event happens, you can move fully into the light. never feel separated, and start your growth in frequency so you vibrate at higher rates. That's what 2012 is all about, according to the masters that I work with. And I've been fighting this. I did the cycle, I did the count, started May 21st, 2012, and worked backwards for 52 years. Count it day by day by day. And the reason I had to do it that way is it's so easy to make a mistake. Took 7 years. Counting on calendars backwards, losing your place, starting over again. It has to match because it repeats every 52 years. If we want to know where we're at now with energies, then we have to dig a little deeper and listen to what we're guided to. So I know I don't expect you to use my count. It's there if you want it. If you're using another count, that's fine too. What I want you to understand, and that'll be in the next part of the presentation, is exactly what those Mayan Tzolk'in glyphs do for your body to help you move forward. So take a break and I'll pull that one up and try and go through it pretty quickly so that you can have a better idea of what this is all about. And thank you for listening. And then we'll have questions and answers after the second one. This part is on patterns and relationships for healing in the thought of the Maya. This one's a little different. And he's not showing up real well, but it was the only picture I found of an ancient shaman healer in full dress and what they might have looked like, so I put him up there anyway. The Tao, or the way of the ancient Mayan, emphasized inclusion versus separation. Everything about that culture was inclusion. In all of the teachings that were left behind, a set of clues was also prominent, guiding us to look for the spiritual aspect of the universal energies. Focus on the patterns and relationships of the energy. And that's what I keep getting downloaded, patterns and relationships. Keep digging deeper. The Mayan worldview. They were far more than calendar or day keepers. They were able to incorporate the powerful celestial spiritual energies into every area of their daily lives. They were the masters of understanding, measure, and movement, which defines Hunab-Ku, their name for Source Creator. If you talk to a Mayan, they aren't even allowed to say Hunab-Ku unless they are a shaman of many, many, many years training. They're not allowed to say the word. That's how sacred it is to them. That is measure and movement. They are allowed to say measure and movement, but not Hunab-Ku. So it's very, very sacred to them. Everything in creation has a size, seen or unseen, which is the measure, and everything in creation has a matching movement. The great central sun, of course, resides in the Pleiades. We are this little dot over here, and this is Orion and the keyhole of Orion where the energies come through. And I have all this in the teachings and in the course that you can download free. There's patterns for the causal energy, combinations for 7 rays, and then all of the Tzolk'in information. They all come through the keyhole of Orion, which you've seen on my site if you've been there. It actually exists. Goes through the great central sun in the Milky Way, then comes to our little sun way down here, and then comes to us and all our planets. So there is a pattern to this energy movement. They believed their knowledge came from the great central sun in our Milky Way galaxy, and then through the sun and the solar system. The energies received through the sun at sunrise and sunset each day feed our physical bodies and flow the information we need from the mind of Source, Hunab-Ku, to our intellectual bodies. that's a fascinating teaching that they have on that, because they actually have the intellectual body is tied to the sun, which is male. The emotional body, which is tied to the moon, is female. Everybody knows that females have a 28-day cycle tied to the moon and the tides and the emotions. But nobody knows that the male have a 23-day cycle tied to the sun and the intellect and the physical. And when I worked as a student of the shamans, they say that 23-day cycle also multiplies in fractals to a 23-year cycle and then a 2300-year cycle. So you guys are just as important as the females, but because of the way the imagination of our Creator worked, that became part of the polarity. The women are the moon and the men are the sun. And then you have someone like me learning sun energy. Okay, I'm not male. Where is this coming from? Well, after a sun initiation, it was quite important to understand timing. That picture isn't coming up real good, but this was taken from my house, which is in the woods, I believe that was a sunrise for fall equinox. I just do the pictures at equinoxes and solstice, and they're always full of energy and beautiful. Unfortunately, you can't see, there's 3 levels of hearts coming off the sun in that picture, all in very, very clear red. And the other interesting thing about it was the trees did not split the prism of the energy. All of the hearts are actually in front of the trees. It did not make them break up or fall apart like you would think the sun would shine through all those branches. You wouldn't get a full shape. You get a full shape. That's how powerful the energy is. But when we were taught and had the sun initiation down there, the key to it was only at sunrise and sunset do you do these meditations so that you don't hurt your eyes. It's the slant of the sun. It doesn't have the radiation as it does at high noon. So when they taught us mornings, working with the morning sunrise, is to receive direction, guidance, solutions, and energy from the universal mind for the day. And in order to focus, because the sun is so massive, they showed us to use a pyramid, make our hands into a pyramid, hold it up to where the sun is rising or setting, and look through the pyramid. You will be amazed at the intensity and the color changes that happen when you focus on it this way and keep it in your pyramid. You get more colorful sunsets energy-wise than you've ever seen in just a sunset or a sunrise. But that's the energy you get in the mornings. And then in the evenings, you are to express your gratitude for remaining connected and receiving all abundance that was flowed to you that day. So you've got a double reason for your meditations with the sun each day. It provides the mana for your physical body. We will come to a time when we become total breatharians working with the sun and only need liquid like water or juices or whatever in social situations. But you could live totally on the energy you receive from the sun if you only do it in the mornings and only do it in the evenings and keep yourself clear and have the activations from the sun. You will be amazed at how your frequencies change and how you vibrate. The next pattern I want to show you is also the sun. And this one was kind of funny. I've had this for years. It was in Earth Memory Sacred Sites by Paul Devereaux. And this artist discovered this pattern when he traced the passage of the sun throughout the year by photographing the trace of the burn marks on planks of wood. And he must have used a mirror to get the sun to make the burn marks to begin with, but I didn't go into all that. I just thought it was a great path, and it was fascinating because it's seen on everything. And you don't always take words and the importance of words when you see something or read something, and you don't always get it right. And as I was preparing this particular presentation, they had me ask a question. Does the sun orbit the Earth? This man is saying that that was the sun's path as it orbited our planet for a year. Well, the sun doesn't orbit the Earth, so that can't be the sun's path, right? We go around the sun. Okay, guys, this pattern is really the path of the Earth as it orbits the sun for a year. The sun's not moving, we are. Well, that gave me pause to think, so I say go back and look at some of your research on patterns, pattern of time and pattern of orbits. This is other research that I've had for years and years and years. I used to teach a course called The Universal Human 101, and this was in that course. Okay, the first part on the top, we've always been told that time travels in a straight line. It's linear. It doesn't. It moves like that, up and down, gyrates. So do all the planets in our solar system. But as we went through school, we were not shown the planets gyrating as they went around in their orbit. We were also, when we had our science fairs, told that everything goes around the sun in an orbit, and it's usually circular. Wrong. It's that shape. Everything travels in an orbit in that shape, not a circle. There are no pure circles out in space, and there are no flat lines. So here we are, all of us educated in school, thinking flat lines, circles, when it really is gyration and petals of a flower. Okay, what do I do with that, guys? That came from The Arrow of Time by Paul Davies, which is a very good book and very old. And if you really want to know about calendars and the history of time and calendars, I would suggest you find that book. You will love it. We really had no calendars for a long time, and the only reason we ended up with a Gregorian calendar was so everybody could go to work and punch a time clock and get paid. It was the only reason they did it. So keep that in mind when you look at calendars. So what this means is space is not static, everything gyrates. And they have shown in that same book the entrance and exit. And you hear NASA talk about windows and vortexes when they're sending the Challenger or things out in space, and vectors, and they got to know all this. So this is important. It's not round. Again, we've got that same shape back again. And then I took it another step and I said, okay, time's not on a straight line. Time is in a gyration. This takes you to astronomy. I could never understand, how do they know a planet's retrograde? How do they know when it's direct? Well, if you take the gyration, you can see when it's going down, it's stationary. When it's going across, it's direct. And when it's going back up again, it looks retrograde. So you can see in astronomy the gyration because you're seeing the precession and the movement, but you're seeing it from the Earth perspective. And that's why it looks like it's going backwards or it's not moving at all. Nothing is static. Everything moves in space. So that helped me a little bit with the motion and understanding those patterns of movement. And then we get to the pattern of the Sulcan energies. And I'm not satisfied with what I'm finding everywhere I go. So I take the 20 glyphs and I put them in a circle. since everything goes in cycles. And I take each glyph and I make 13 days. That's their week. That's their cycle. Everything moves 13 and 20, 13 and 20. And as I draw this glyph moving, I start with Imish, which is the number 1 glyph, and I put him on number 1. Then I find he moves the following set of 13 days to number 8. Then he doesn't appear in the 3rd week at all. He goes back to source. He goes to 0. And as I took each glyph around in this pattern, which repeats through eternity, it was the most awesome pattern I have ever seen. And I took that pattern and I started reducing it and making fractals out of it, because a Sulcan round is a fractal that repeats through eternity, making larger and larger and larger cycles, all the way up to the Alutun, which is 64 million years. That's quite a bit of fractals. That's their highest count. So I said, okay, let's go to the micro with it. So for years I have been seeing, as the sun hits, my hair is a little longer, when the sun hits it, I can see a mandala of the light cells in my hair. My hair is no longer hair, it's clusters of cells. Then my eyesight starts to see it in my skin, starts to see it in trees, in flowers. I'm now seeing this same mandala. You can see through the cell. It's totally transparent, yet it's got all these little mandalas in it and all these colors of the rainbow going through it. Sometimes they zigzag, sometimes they're straight. And I'm trying to reproduce this as an artist in my mind. How can I make somebody see what this looks like? Because it is so beautiful. If you were standing in the sun and I looked at your hair, it would not be hair, it would be clusters of these light cells. All these tiny, tiny little light cells, all seeing through them one on top of the other. But I can't take a picture of that. Okay. So when I got this far with the Sulcan rounds, okay, they're going on out into space, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm going to see what do they look like when they get smaller. Well, the more I played with them and the smaller I got them and the more fractals, they made what I was seeing as the light cell, and that's this picture. So I just share that with you because I'm the only one that seems to be able to see that, and I can't draw it any other way. When I sit and try and draw it and I lose it, I lose the mandala effect. So when I multiplied the fractals, I finally got it. So the rainbow of color is actually the activating energy that when you portal it through a person's physical body, goes to the cellular level and the light cells at the same time. And that's what causes your frequencies to raise and your vibration to get higher. So that was a little bit important, and that was based on the Sulcan research, which is why I say that this Sulcan round has more layers than people can ever imagine. Then I found them in the sky. Okay, well, if I can move them around and make a flower of life pattern, what can I do with them in the sky? Because every Sulcan glyph has a matching energy of a constellation. So I took that same pattern and I sent it back to source on 0, which was the great central sun. And this was the sky pattern that matched a real sky pattern of the 12 constellations in an astrology wheel. And the center, which you'll see in the next slide a little later, matches the natal wheel. Coming in the center becomes serpens, Draco serpens, which are two very important glyphs in Mayan creation. Okay, so now we've got them in the sky, and that works with, in my course, all of the combinations of 3 constellation glyphs combining with 3 solar glyphs and 3 galactic glyphs, and it goes on and on and on in patterns of 3. So we've got sky patterns now that the Mayans knew about, but only left us clues, so we had to go look for them. And this is the total pattern that repeats through eternity. Now, I'm going to show you very quickly what each of these 20 glyphs, as it follows this sequence, without you ever knowing that it's happening, does to you in your body. There's the sequence again. Number 1, life. This is your life, source energy that keeps you in body. Number 1, that's life source energy. When it goes to number 8, that's infinity. The knowledge energy allowing you to change from unseen to seen energy for infinity. That's the second place it goes. Then it goes back to source and gets re-energized. In week 4, that same glyph will come back on number 2, which is balance. Energy to keep you in balance on your earth walk. Week 5, it goes to number 9, which is completion of cycles, energy for cycles of experience. Then it goes back to source. All you have to remember is every third set of 13, it goes back to source. You will not see it in that week. Then it comes back on 3, which is the breath of spirit, recognizing your breath as a connection to spirit. Number 10, which is manifestation energy to manifest your desires, back to source. Number 4, it comes in rhythm and measure, understanding the perfection of all in reality. Number 11 is for resolution of duality, transmuting it into harmony. Don't ever think that number 11 is all just dissolution and disharmony. It is your choice to transform that energy, and that's what 11 does, pushes you to do that. Then it goes to 0. Then it goes to 5, which is centering to stay in balance, and 12, which is harmonic resonance, resonating with all in creation. Now, when I did this, normally 12 is dynamic stasis. Okay, dynamic stasis means I can't move, I can't change anything. And I talked to the Mayans and I said, you don't really believe dynamic stasis. I said, everything you're telling me is about measure and movement. Can I change this to harmonic resonance? What it is the energy to move you out of dynamic stasis so you have harmonic resonance. And that is a lot more helpful than just saying, oh, dynamic stasis, you're not going anywhere. So that's number 12, and that's after our consultation. I was allowed to do that. Then it goes back to source, and then it comes in at number 6, which again pushes you to go within and remember at the cellular level the vastness of your being, so that you can have number 13, which is universal movement and the magic of awesome portals. Back to source, and we end with number 7, which completes the cycle, which is your mystic channel. Opens so that you can stay connected with spirit and be energized with all these energies over and over and over again, all 20 of them every day for eternity to help you be a human. Now, does that sound like something that you would be able to work with? Only if your mind can encompass a whole. Do not go into separation and parts. Every one of those 20 Solfeggio glyphs constantly moves in and out, energizing you every single day of your life. So we put them through the torus, the double torus grid, along with the planets and the constellations, and we end up with about 90 or 96 energies coming in and trying to activate our human bodies in every moment of every day. And the only reason you don't receive this activation is those meridians in your body are clogged with issues and issues can be released. So that's why this was important, that you understand all the mechanisms of how energy comes from God's mind to your body and what it does and why. And then I was told, okay, go look at the Paris Codex, and in the Paris Codex we have 13 constellations. So I'm down there and I'm talking to the daykeeper, and I said, okay, if it was in the Paris Codex and the dates are all strung out there and this is how it worked, why isn't anybody using this? Well, nobody wants to be bothered. Everybody's worried that it'll change astrology. And I said, well, wait a minute. You've got the 12. They stay in the circle. The 13th is in the middle. There's the Mayan natal chart. So it doesn't change your 12 houses at all. The pattern of movement that I just went over with you, that sequence is in the natal chart, the 1, 8, 2, 9, da-da-da-da-da, it's all there. Where the 13th one ends up is in the middle, serpents, Draco, serpents. In the sky, they come right down in the middle. So each one of these Sulcan glyphs is connected to one of the constellations in a natal chart. Some of them have 2. Some of them have more because there's 20 glyphs and there's 13 houses. So I said, okay, now we have to look at the chart that the Mayans had on the body. I think that's next. Yeah, the Sulcan spin points on the body. There's 20 glyphs, and this is where they automatically activate your spin points on your body every day of your life, whether you realize it or not. And they are connected to the constellations which end up on the natal chart. So you can see if you are a human walking around and you have no knowledge of energy, you have no knowledge of Mayans, you're still being activated by these whether you know it or not. It doesn't matter. You're a human on this planet. You're being activated by the sun, the moon, the stars, the constellations, everything. But knowing it helps you understand the spiritual energies that you're being activated with, because every one of these 20 glyphs has a spiritual intent and purpose in the energy that comes in and activates your body. If your natal chart was done with the Mayan energies, you would have a nice picture of what the heck you chose to accomplish in your spiritual growth when you came here. So it would be a help to you, not a hindrance. So far I haven't got any astrologists who want to do this because it changes the dates a little. In the 13, instead of 30 days in between each house, you only get 28 days, which gives you the 13th in the middle. So the one it affects the most is the middle is July 7th to August 8th. I happen to be August 9th, so I get to stay a Leo. But it does affect that a little bit between those two. But it still is another layer of what the Mayans were trying to teach us. And I think that's the end of this presentation so we can get into questions. But what I want to say to you as a closing, here's the spin points in the histones. The spin points that they activate also reach down into the histones in your atoms, and this is the diagram of what each histone does, except for number 1, which is elusive, and they're having trouble finding it. But I had to put that last one in because that sequence goes from God's mind to the histones again in your atoms with energy activation every day. And lots of potential. And I thank you for listening to all of this quickly. But even, if you go look at every culture out there, it's not just the Mayans. The Hopi told us to look deeper at the layers. That is very, very, very important. Do not ever take any surface and say, this is it. This is all the answers I need. This is all there is, because it never will be. And from my master, the most important words he said in one of our trips was, oneness is more than just words. Understand energy, relationships, patterns, activation, what it does for you, and you'll have a better understanding of who you are and the vastness of your being. But until you do understand that, you're just this little human walking around on the earth that gets in trouble once in a while and can't get out of it, gets sick and can't get well, gets confused and can't find an answer. The answers are there for us. We just got to follow those clues and put that puzzle together. And I say thank you, but I would like to say we have time for questions a little bit. I have no idea. I'm out of time. 25 minutes. 25 minutes, good. So, fire away. Thank you.
So if you have a question. So here it is. Okay, good.
Hi. Is this on? Yeah. What happened to the Mayans? I mean, if they were all so tuned in and everything, what happened to them?
They took their bodies and they learned to transcend reality. Okay? And one of the places they did this was on top of the Pyramid of Koba on a zenith when the sun is straight up in the sky, no shadow, and the constellations are all aligned with the Milky Way and make the path home. And when you stand on top of Koba, like they had me do on May 21st, that's the time of the zenith, May 21st to May 23rd, at that area of the Yucatan. Now, not in the rest of the world, but that's in the Yucatan, and that's where they were. And if you feel the portal when that sun is at zenith, I tell you, it took and popped the inlays out of my Mayan bracelet I was wearing and burned, I had moccasins on, burned the imprints of my feet into those moccasins when that portal was sent through. I am hoping that my master is right, that in this lifetime I'll live to be 150 and I will learn this transmutation into the other dimension. Because I'm curious as hell. They take me to these places and they show me where it happened. The Anasazis did the same thing, and they did it in this little site in the northeast corner of the Anasazi lands. It happens to be in Colorado, right out of Pagosa Springs on the border. There's a park called Chimney Rock. It's not even in the national park system. It's very well hidden in the agricultural system, which nobody knows why, even the park rangers. So you can't go there unless there's the gal on duty who only works once in a while. And of course, I got sent when she was on, and I got to stand in the portal where the Anasazi stood and transmuted their bodies back and went home, also to the Pleiades in the Milky Way galaxy. So it's quite interesting when you think we don't know everything there is about transmuting energy from unseen to seen, let alone from seen to unseen, but they did. That's why no bones were found. If you went to the temple of Uxmal in the Poot country, they used to have 5 million Mayans go to that site. Nobody even goes there. They don't talk about it. They talk about Chichen Itza. Well, yeah, that was a big civilization there. But 5 million Mayans in one temple is a lot of Mayans. You know, where did they go? There was no remains. There was no bones found. All that the archaeologists and the scientists can come up with is, oh, they had a drought and they either died or they scattered or the tribes went somewhere else. And they say that about every culture that disappeared, including the Incas. So does that help? Transmutation.
Judith?
learning to take, as your frequencies raise, you vibrate at a higher rate. You will vibrate right out of third dimension into fourth dimension, and when you vibrate out of fourth dimension into fifth, then you're unseen. Okay? Vibration. Get those frequencies raised. Next.
In a book I read, there was a statement that said, they took the law of time from the people so they could not find their portals.
No, they found their portals.
They did then, but
Yeah.
since then...
Since then, no, there is no portals.
Since
for
then,
them.
we've lost our law of time. And so now that we're understanding singularities and portals and...
They're coming back, or they would not have had me go on top of Koba in 2000 when it matches 2012 and have it totally prepared and anchored that portal. The portals are being opened all over the planet, not just in the Maya lands, but all over the planet. And there are wonderful players out there doing it. Does that help?
Anyone else like to have?
I can't see anybody because of the lights, so you're going to have to just... You're
I had-
invisible. You're in the unseen.
I had a question about the tones. How do you find your tones?
Okay. I'm going to cover that in, hopefully on Thursday night, I will give you a demonstration. I hope to give you a demonstration, if I'm allowed. You're not filming Thursday night, right? Just tonight. Okay. Of an actual demonstration of how I do a session and what those tones do. And also the Solfeggio Tones. There was some work that came out quite a few years ago on the Solfeggio Tones. They were found in the Song of Solomon in the Bible in code and translated into tones. And I have a CD of those tones. Each one of the 6 tones is 12 minutes long. And on my workshop that I did before I came here from Texas, when I was doing the hands-on teaching for Saturday and Sunday, I played the tones 6 times and then did not play them again. Your body is the 7th tone. So when you hear music or drumming or anything that takes you, reaches your heart, reaches your soul node resides in your heart. It's not in your brain. You can't think a song is great and that's my soul note. That song or that sound, or it can be Tibetans chanting, it can be flutes, it can be any kind of music that reaches right into your heart, stops you, and takes you away. I mean, some of it will take your breath away when it hits you that hard. That's when you know there's a tone in that song or in that sound that resonates with you. But these Solfeggio tones, the 6 tones, are for you to become the 7th tone. When you hear them 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes, and then you bring up an om from inside of you as the 7th tone after you've heard them 6 times, then you become your body becomes the 7th tone, and then you vibrate at a higher rate. Does that make any sense? Okay. And I do make them available. If I didn't bring enough with me, depending on how many we have, I will send more. I will make more and send more to you, or to the library or to Asha to hand out. If I didn't bring enough, you can only bring so much in a suitcase. Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. Back to the transmutation or the vibrations. Is it that every part of your body and all the physical beings of the Mayans vibrated at the exact same
When they
or
left,
level to
when they
leave?
transmuted, yes. They all vibrated at least fifth dimension level. Some were higher, some were sixth and seventh dimension, but they all vibrated at least fifth dimension level to move into the unseen and take their bodies with them. Yes?
How many dimensions are there?
Oh, that's debatable. I don't think anybody knows. I've worked with scientists who play around with napkins and say, oh, we're up to 11 dimensions or 12 dimensions. I say, explain that, and they can't. But, you know, they have to have a mathematical equation to go with each one. I only have to have the Mayan number sequence to figure out there's more than 3 or more than 4, because that's what takes you into dimensions of the unseen as well as the seen. So no, there is no one decision yet made on that or knowledge base on that.
What do you see in our future as far as the transition?
I think if you empower yourselves to not just survive, not just live in a world that you don't like and you don't like what's going on, learn to work with energy, learn to work with the patterns and the energies that come to you every day, and allow yourself to blossom. We're in a time period where we can move into mastership of our being, but that takes your will, that takes your purpose, that takes your attention, that takes you out of learned behavior patterns that you're so used to. You get complacent. Complacency won't work in the time period between now and 2012 when we tilt into that gate of light. And there was just a program on Nova not too long ago. I don't know how many of you saw it, but it talked about, it was the best one I've seen on the magnetics of the planet and the time period that we're in. It kind of coordinated with everything else on the electromagnetic grid changing, the poles flipping, and the electromagnetics from the sun weakening our protection, and eventually they didn't know if it would be and our magnetics thinning in the core of the earth, but they didn't know if it would take 300 or 3,000 years for this to progress. But as we tip into the light, everything changes. You're in it now. Your earth is changing. You've got warming. That's not all just from pollution. That's cycle changes. There are cycles and cycles and cycles. So don't panic on believing that it's all from mankind polluting. It's not. We're in vast changes of cycles, and that's part of it. Our earth will look different when it goes through the light and through the what's going to be 1,000 years of light. It's certainly going to look different. One of the things they showed at the end of that program was the whole earth will have curtains of the aurora borealis everywhere. That is beautiful. I mean, just the thought of the whole earth being surrounded by aurora borealis and curtains and rainbows of light should tell you something. We're in for a nice ride. But nothing is ever going to stay the same. It's always going to be in process of change.
Have you heard the rumor or whatever that the solar system is now coming down into alignment with the Galactic Plane, and right around 2012, and that as it does that, the Galactic Plane has this increase of gravity in such that will basically tear the Earth apart?
No, it's more thinning of the gravity. I'm sorry, a thinning of the magnetics like they showed on Nova makes much more sense. If you look at my website, you'll see a full animation of what I showed you of the gate of God and the gate of man, and maybe you'll understand it better than I do because I don't understand too much about astrology, except that it's pretty accurate. But in that it shows the pole tilting into the light on the gate of man on May 21st in 2012. If we're tilting into the light, that means that those electromagnetics from the sun, and if it stays in high intensity from now through then, we're going to have a lot of changes. But they're going to be good changes. They're going to be changes where you can see and feel your frequency. Now, I've been also watching a lot on what the solar flares do to the magnetites in our brain. And every study that's been done in Russia has not made it to our country. But they're studying the magnetites of our brain because on the solar flares, if you will look at going back to 2000, I started to match them with violent events like school shootings. They matched every school shooting was a massive solar flare. And I discussed it with the head of the magnetic laboratory in Huntsville, Alabama. And he said, Judith, you may be right, but it would take an enormous amount of money to study this. So I can't help you. A year later, I get a notice from him that NASA decided to fund why homing pigeons cannot find their way home because the magnetites in their brain aren't working anymore on solar flares. So I call him back and I say, okay, the government found enough money to study homing pigeons, but we can't study humans. Well, we can't prove that it affects humans. Well, up until a year ago, you weren't interested in whether it affected pigeons either. You know, but I happen to be a human, and I'd particularly like to know if my mind is going to go bananas because of solar flares that our magnetites can't follow. I'm sorry, I can't help you. So we've had no more conversations since then. And I still track it, and yes, the Colorado school shootings, a year later on a very high intense solar flare was when the mother out of nowhere went in, bought a gun, and shot herself, okay? The Colorado school shootings were on a solar flare also. Just about every school shooting that we've had has been on an intense solar flare. So I will finish this with what the Russians tell us. If we could get their research, I could prove it, but I can't because they won't give them a visa to get in this country. Even though we list them and invite them, and that's what they're going to talk about, they don't show up. But what they say is, on these intense solar flares, because the magnetite can't find it, it causes anger first. This is all out of no reason. You don't know why you get angry. Then if you're really, really unbalanced, it goes into violence. Then it can go into total madness, and then you might never come back from that. So what they're doing to resolve it is they're all wearing big magnets on their bodies because they need more magnetism so their magnetics in their brain can work. So if y'all guys want to wear magnets, you might have a chance at not going into anger, violence, and total madness, is all I could find out.
I'm curious about the time from it looked like 1650 to 1700s when solar flares were practically non-existent.
If you think about it, it was a time period where nobody felt empowered. Everybody was kind of just in, you know, we live on the earth, but we're not really doing anything, you know. And then in the 1600s, I believe, was when they started sending the Spaniards over to all the other countries to invade more and more and more. So it was a dark time. It was a very dark time where the people had no empowerment. People were pushed around and told where to go and enslaved and whatever, but no real self-empowerment. And in a time of high intensity, you are pushed by that energy to activate, to grow, to think, to learn, to move into your mastership of being or leave the planet. So what do you want to do? have complacency and no movement and stay in the dark ages, with somebody else holding all the power, or change that and go to the flip side and keep the intensity for 70 some years and get used to the light, get used to the new dimensions, get used to how it feels in your body, and change it. So that's the two choices. Does that make sense?
So does it have to be one or the other, where either
Well,
there's
because
stagnation
everything is to extremes right now. You don't have any movement at all until the pendulum swings to extremes, extremes, extremes. If you look around you, your whole reality, everything is pushed to extremes. That creates change. People will not wake up until they have to, until they're really, really pushed, unfortunately.
Is this why we're, going through the Iraqi war and all this stuff? This is waking up the... thank you. Because the Iraqi war and all these other things and Bush and all this he's really waking us up.
He's really doing you a favor by waking you up. And even though we don't like war, we have got a few more years for all of this anger, dissentive behavior of our third dimension warring mentality to play itself out. But if you look at the gate of man opening, where we can raise our frequencies and become masters of our being, that's not a long period of time left. On the Mayan schedule, that is the last fourth world event. We're in the fourth world going into the fifth. So there will be no more dissentive fourth world events. After that, it will all move towards going into the light.
I just think that it can't last, so another 5 years of...
Well, it doesn't have to all be that intense, but yeah, it's not going to, it's just the way that the universe works. If you're not fully open into the light, you still have all the aggressors out there fighting each other. Our humanity has a very warring mentality. Look at history.
I know.
Judith, could you give us your your email, not your email address, but your web page, please?
Yeah, the website, it's the name of the course, Mayan Tonal Acupressure Course.org. If you can remember that long name of the course, you've got my website. And I will always keep updating that course as I go along, and when I do that, you'll see one on there that says revised on a certain date. That's in case you went and downloaded it before that date. Come back and download it again because it's been changed. So that way you'll always know if there's new information included.
Say it one more time.
Mayan Tonal Acupressure Course.org.
I think we have time for one more question.
Is it possible to...
Acupressurecourse.org. Acupressure's with one C, A-C-U.
So you're saying that portals are opening up all over the world. I'm wondering if, is it possible to create new portals?
Absolutely. And let me make another suggestion. Don't feel helpless in this time period and worry on how much time we have left for them to destroy us. Gather together and use your power. I'm going to give you an example. The year before, 2001, on September 11th, there was 1 billion meditation around the world created, and they got 1 billion people to meditate at a certain time for a 24-hour period. And what happened that day, and I didn't realize it was the same date until like a year later, that actually, when I went back and looked through my old emails, it was 9/11, a year before 9/11. That was such a powerful meditation with 1 billion people. That was the goal, that we got a press release out of NASA saying that the sun had no face that day. Nobody could understand. We were in high intensity in 2000, and there wasn't a sunspot on the sun for the whole time of that meditation. So know you have this power. If you work together, if any three or more gather together, you have the power of creation to affect, to change. Gather together, meditate, tone, sing, celebrate, ask for the changes to lighten up without the violence. Don't ever ask for just peace, and I'm going to tell you why. Peace begins within each of you. It's not out there. All these people who pray for peace are praying for separate peace, separateness, considering in their minds, because we have been separate for 12,000 years, it doesn't change anything. Get the peace started within your being. Get your being cleared. Make sure the energy that you express out is peace. That's how peace begins. And gather together to do it. And then it's powerful. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.